Okay, so I know I showed this once before, but I thought I'd do a recap of my sword cabinet that I made. There's my Menpo masks right there, but I just added, there's the commas we just got, and there's the jutes. I gotta hang them up, but I just made these brackets so the size actually hang on either side. Trying to get this all straightened out, fixed up. In fact, I gotta hang this up right here. My wife got this for me from an artist on Etsy. It's an Oni. He does all these. They're ink, but I have to hang that up still. But thought I'd give you guys a little bit closer look at our sword cabinet here, and it's all 1.5 tubing, and the wood's just regular pine wood inlaid. It sits kind of flush on the outside, but then we got the lights, which change. Unfortunately, they're not remote controlled, but I can change them any color I want by a push of a button, and I could do multicolored if I want, and then off. And then of course up here is my Kamidana, which I said before, every day I put water in here. The 1st and 15th you put salt and rice and water, and then you have 2 of these, one on either side, which you put sake in, and then those are ofudas, and all kamidanas have a mirror. And this is interesting. There's a guy in Japan that makes these, and they're for you to make a wish, but you only make 1 wish off of them. I forget the name of it. My wife remembers. And then that door and the other one actually open, and I can close them. But yeah, this is my wife's Iaido. It's a 1060 unsharpened, which has got engraved dragon, which is nice. We haven't done a review on it yet. And then this is my wife's custom from Swords, another custom, which is my wife's from Swords of Noshar, and so are these 2. This is my very first custom job that my wife had done. And then my Shobu. So very much like 4 of these are all customs on this rack. But yeah, so this thing's gonna get all done up. We have a spare room now, so probably gonna turn that into our sword room and whatnot. But this over here is another picture from that artist, and these are kind of cool. There's one right there. I have to get the complete set. There's another one, and then lights glaring on it, and then there's another one, and these 3 are representative of Bushido. And then my wife got me that one right there. There's my wife's Kill Bill, which we're gonna have to do a review on. The Bride's Blade. And then I have this banner right here, which I wake up to every morning. It's my Bushido banner, and it has all the virtues on the side. So when I wake up every morning, I see it every morning. So, which is a really cool banner. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big banner. So we have Tomo too. Hi, Tomo. But that's about it for right now. We've got more coming. Some new books, which I'll be talking about. So, stay tuned. Alright, how's everyone doing today? We've got Samurai Sunday. So, a couple of new things. We went to a used bookstore and found some interesting books. One being this one right here. This is a folklore story, and let me see here. It has the title of it, An Inch Boy. Ishi no Boshi, an inch boy. Basically, he's an inch tall. This is a real children's book, you could say. Now, the way that you read Japanese books is, this is the front. So when you open it, you go from right, if I get the next page, to the left. Okay. And this tells the story of a an elderly couple wanted a child, and they were granted a child, but he was 1 inch tall. So, which is kind of cool. So, kind of a neat story. It's all in Japanese. So that was kind of neat that I had found this at the bookstore. Another thing that we found at the bookstore, and we decided to get it because it's Blades, our channel, is this book right here. Okay. Chinese Swordsmanship. This was published in 2005, so it's really recent. Talks about Chinese swordsmanship chivalry, which actually made it to Japan, which you could kind of say is what's brought about Bushido in Japan. But this actually, it shows how you do movements with the jin. So we're going to be getting some Chinese swords, Dao, the jin, and I'm going to be studying this because when you watch, I watched a few videos on YouTube of this style of swordsmanship, and it's a lot like Iaido, but it's more fluid. Like it's like water. Your movements, whereas a lot of Iaido, it's very robotic looking. This is more fluid in movement, and you'll notice if you look up
videos of it, you'll notice like they a lot of times pick up their left leg. That basically is to help with form, balance, and from their leg getting hit. So that's why they do it. Like one of the moves I've noticed is they'll have the jin out there, but this hand is right here, like so. And it's to keep it out of the way. So this hand, and you also, if somebody is going to strike, when you block, of course it emphasizes you use the flat of the blade. So when you block, it says you want to block close to the guard, and then what you do is, let's say this is our sword, it hits your sword, you take these two fingers and push it away. Because once you push it away, then you can attack. So a lot different than Iaido. But we're going to be checking this out and seeing what is what it's all about. So another book that I found, which is really interesting, because this shows a lot of stuff that a lot of books on Japanese weapons don't show, and that's this one right here. So this is a quite interesting book. Dwelled into it just a little bit last night. Oh, let me go back to this book right here. So like I said, we went to a used bookstore. This was $45 for this book alone. Okay, so we looked it up. You could get it on Amazon. It's $169 on Amazon, and we got it for $45. So if you're looking to get this book, it's not cheap. If you're looking to get it brand, and this thing's like mint condition, like the person barely cracked it open and they got rid of it. I mean, this is almost a $200 book. So just a side note. So back to this book. So it talks about a brief history of the samurai, a brief history of how those swords are made, which we all pretty much know how they were made. But then it gets into the different styles of the swords, what type of weapons they use. It gets into the Yumi bow a little bit. It doesn't get into, I know a lot of people get upset when you call this the musket or flintlock. People go, that isn't what it's called. Translate the name that's used in Japanese, it means flintlock. Okay, so it doesn't get much into that. It gets into more of the swords, pole arms, non-lethal weapons. But it touches a little bit on them. So things like that, like I was reading this on the cover, this tanto right here, this one, was actually refitted and the saya was redone, because if you notice, it has like stripes on it, and then right over here it has a little emblem put on it. Well, it turns out, like all cultures, there's fashion during each period. So that's the whole point. They had it. There was one point where they actually would have stripes on like their tantos. It was a fashionable thing. So this person had their tanto refitted for the fashion of the time. So, which is kind of interesting. But another thing it gets into, the tachi. Now there was variations of the tachi. You had the tachi that was for the battlefield, but then they had another tachi that was, you could say, ceremonial. It was only used for the courts, when you're in court. Put a image of it right here. So the difference is the blade would be shorter than Obviously, it's not a tachi, but just think this is a tachi. So we go like that. The blade would be shorter. So the blade length would be the length of an uchi katana, which is this right here, 27 to 28 inches. Because a historical tachi, they're 32 inches long, because you would use them on horse, so you could strike down at your enemy. So what's the difference from a battlefield tachi to this tachi? Well, this tachi is known as Ifu no tachi. The difference is it has all the embellishments of a tachi except for the handle's different. The handle doesn't have Edo wrapping. It's just samigawa. That's it. It's got the metal thing on the back like a normal tachi, but there's no Edo wrapping. And they would have manuki in the handle still. Very lavish looking manuki. So, and the reason being is, could you use it as a weapon? Yes, it was sharp. But since you just have samigawa on there, yeah, you're going to be able to grip it really, really well. But it's not as practical in battle for comfort, because samigawa is very rough. It's like sandpaper. So it was for, and that was the whole point. It was for ceremonial, for court, when you're dealing with things in the court and whatnot. So yes, you could use it as a weapon, but it was more for appearance than anything. Hence, just a samigawa wrap. So you wouldn't be drawing it that much. And they would use it for, like, hunting. If they want to hunt. In this book, it describes, one of the things they would also wear that for, the Ifu no tachi. This is kind of messed up. This is during the Edo period. This was a sport. Going out and shooting dogs. That's kind of messed up. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say about that. But, so that's the thing of the Ifu no tachi. It was just ceremonial, appearance-wise. They also, if you ever play Ghost of Tsushima, you can change out his swords and everything, and you'll notice some of them have a fur on the end. It went from the end to right about the middle of the saya, historically. Now, the fur, it could be tiger, a lot of times it was bear fur, and you can remove it and actually open it up and lay it flat. High-ranking officials on the battlefield would have those on the end of their sayas. It was a symbol status of their rank. That meant they were the highest ranking samurai on the battlefield. So, not much of them are seen historically, but they did exist. Because like I said, you could take them off. Let me see if I can't find an image of it in here really quickly. But this is a really fascinating book. It gets into tantos, the wakizashis, all kinds of... Here we go, right here. So, you can see it has tiger fur on this one. And they could take this tiger fur off, like I said, and it would open up and you could lay it flat. So yeah, that it was your rank. So you could be, per se, like a general on the battlefield. So would they get into conflict? Probably not. They would stay in a safe area and command the troops. I have a book, one of my books, I've had for years, actually shows the layout of how their battle formations were, and as soon as I can, I will blow the image up so everyone can see that, because they had a specific way they did battle formations. So much that it even carried on in later periods, even into World War II, how they did their battle formations, because it was very productive, their battle formations. They just changed things, you know, for the time periods is all they did. So, and then it touches a little bit on the kodachi. Now, Joe over at Steel Forge and Fire, go check out his channel, had nobody could really make up their mind what it was. Was it a wakizashi or a kodachi, if I remember correctly? This is my view from my research. I would say it's a kodachi. In fact, I think Eric Hussein right now is sampling it, because these are samples from Cloudhammer, which is they've been around, but they're really starting to make a name in the sword community. So I don't have one yet, so I can't test one. But what's the difference between the two? All right, first of all, kodachi is a smaller version of a tachi. It's almost like the wakizashi to the uchi katana. But what are the differences? A kodachi is 24 inches standard length, blade length. So it's not considered a long sword, it's actually considered a short sword. It can be 25 inches too, though, the blade length. Now, like I said, tachi historically are 32 inches long with a very deep sori. The soris went up to like 1.26, so like 1.25 inch deep sori. And the sori is the curvature of the blade. Now, obviously, uchi katanas don't have that much of a sori to it. My wife, a couple of hers are almost 1 inch deep soris, so that's pretty good. And the sori assists in your cut, so yeah, it is actually important. But they didn't need him that on the uchi katanas. They didn't need him that deep because they're wearing them on their hip and they wear on horseback. That's the whole point. So that's another factor for the kodachi, because the kodachi would have a deeper sori too, just like the tachi. Another way you can kind of figure out if it's a kodachi is the fittings. Fittings on a tachi and a kodachi are more elaborate. The saya's got metal fittings on it, and the metal fittings were to protect it during battle. That's why they did it. So the embellishments on it, like I'll throw an image up right here of a kodachi. It would have, some of them look like an ifu no tachi, where it was just samigawa, no ita wrap, okay? But they would use it as a battle sword, all right? So that's another thing for how you can distinguish, is it a wakizashi or a kodachi. Those are the differences. Also the fittings, the suba. Which way does the imagery, if it has it, like this one's just plain, because when you wear uchi katana in your belt, the images should be facing up, okay? So when somebody sees it, they can see the imagery. Now, on a tachi, the images with the blade down would face up. My O tanto, the fittings on it are actually a tachi fittings, because when I have it like that in the obi belt, the images are facing down. So, cats are going crazy right now. In fact, hang on. Let me go get the O tanto and I'll show you. So if you notice, you can see that the dragon's upside down. There we go. But if I turn it that way, the dragon is right side up. So that's how another way you can figure out if it's what the fittings are, by how the fittings are. If it's tachi or uchikatana. Now, do some sword companies like this do that? They'll use the same fittings. Yes, it's fine, you know. And tachi fittings are normally more squared off. So, but either way, the fittings, whichever way the blade is sitting when you're wearing it, the person viewing it should see the fittings facing up, not down. So, which is kind of nice seeing that people are making kodachis now, because they're not very popular. During the Edo period of time too, regular people weren't allowed to own the uchikatana. It was illegal. They couldn't even own a tachi because it was a longsword. But they could own the wakizashi and they could own the kodachi because they weren't considered longswords, they were considered short swords. So even though the kodachi had 24, you could even have a 25-inch blade on it, that's pretty good. So we've got some, I have a lot of research to do. But it's going to be fun. Like I said, this book has so much in it. I mean, it's not a heck of a long book. He even gets into how samurai came about, which I will get into that in another video. Because really nobody knows who started the samurai historically, but they know where they came from. And you're going to be kind of surprised who they actually were at first. So, unless you already know. But hopefully you've made it this far in the video, because we're going to have a little cutting session right after this, so stick around and we'll see you all later.